France's Minister for Ecological Transition, Monique Barbu, will remain in her post despite her opposition to a bill allowing bee-harming pesticides to come back into use. She had submitted her resignation earlier on Wednesday, but President Emmanuel Macron rejected it. The minister will stay due to the urgency to address the consequences of climate change, her office said. On Tuesday, Parliament passed the government's emergency agriculture bill on the conditional reintroduction of certain pesticides authorized in the European Union but banned in France. The outgoing minister criticized the bill and said the reversal was one environmental setback too many. The law gives France's Health and Safety Agency the authority to conditionally authorize the use of acetamiprid and fluopyradifurone. The bill's supporters say that sugar beet and hazelnut farmers need the insecticides, which have been forbidden in France since 2018 and 2019. Barbu noted that acetamiprid was banned using the scientific evidence available at the time. Last year, France passed another bill allowing use of the pesticide, but it was struck down after strong public protests.
A massive blaze that tore through southern France is largely contained, officials have said. France has so far seen a record area burned by wildfires by mid-July. Firefighters have been battling near daily outbreaks across the country in recent weeks.
Il est pour l'instant contenu dans son enveloppe, c'est-à-dire qu'il ne progresse plus beaucoup. Néanmoins, nous avons encore de nombreux points chauds, de nombreuses flammes encore dans certains endroits. Donc nous sommes très vigilants ce matin.
Wildfires are also raging in other areas across Europe, including in Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece. In Spain, over 600 firefighters and troops and 29 aircraft tackled on Tuesday for a 6-day massive wildfire north of Madrid. Much like the rest of Europe, Spain has seen back-to-back heat waves, which further complicate firefighting efforts. Scientists warn that human-caused climate change is the cause of more frequent and intense heat waves, while also creating conditions for sudden and destructive storms.
Wildfires emit black carbon, sometimes called soot. It's very small particles of partially combusted material, and we breathe them in, and then they're so tiny, some of them, that they can get through our lungs and into our bloodstream. So there's the obvious respiratory impact that can happen quite quickly, so asthma, but there's also longer-term implications like lung cancer, or once these particles get through into the bloodstream, they can affect every single organ, causing heart attacks, strokes, and over the long term, even dementia. For people who live in the vicinity that won't be affected by the fire itself on the ground, but will be affected by the air pollution, what we need is for authorities to warn them that it's coming, so that if they can move, they can choose to evacuate. And if they can't do that, to make sure that they stay inside, have air purification if they can, and really try and prevent breathing this pollution in. Climate change and air pollution and wildfires is a really vicious circle. We know that air pollutants are emitted at the same time as greenhouse gases. That's causing higher temperatures, which is causing more wildfires, which is causing more air pollution like black carbon, that's then heating the planet more. So we really need to tackle other causes of air pollution as well as the wildfires to start bringing the temperatures down.
The European Union's Food Safety Agency has reduced the safe daily intake level of TFA, the so-called forever chemical that is found widely in drinking water. The EFSA said the updated values were based on new evidence that showed TFA changes level of a hormone produced by the thyroid gland that plays an important role in regulating the body, among other effects. TFA are used in a variety of products, from kitchenware and medical devices to defense and clean energy equipment. But their usage may carry risks to people and the environment, including wildlife. According to the EFSA, TFA can form when PFAS substances break down, including from certain active substances in pesticides. TFA can then end up in groundwater, soil and food crops, it says. EU members are required to monitor PFAS levels in drinking water, while other monitoring programs track PFAS levels in food.
The environmental health is connected with human health because the consumption of seafood, for example, fish that we ingest, the microplastics that they ingest will end up in our body. Microplastics have effects on ecosystems. Ecosystems, they provide services to us, so they are important for us as well. First of all, we need to take samples. So there are different techniques for this. What we usually use is a manta net. So this is a net that floats at the surface of the ocean, and thousands of liters of water will go through it, and all the microplastics will be retained in the net. And so we then recover those microplastics and we bring them to our labs. So first there is a processing step that we need to do to get rid of the organic material. And then in the next step, we go towards the analysis of the sample. The technique that we use makes use of a fluorescence coloration, so a fluorescent dye. So we stain the particles and then we use machine learning to identify particles based on their coloration. And then we also do a check with the FTIR, so that's a spectroscopy-based method to validate particle identity. It's a screening method meant for monitoring of microplastics, and so we start from a training data set for the model in which we have 7 of the main polymers included, so the ones that are most often found at sea. Of course, if you want to study very specific polymer types, you would need to adapt the model, which you can do, but so we target most common ones. And of course, it's not a chemical analysis, so it's a screening, so you would need to do a validation always of a subset of particles. It is important to know how many plastics there are present at sea, because we want to assess the trends over longer periods. So it's very important that we have continuous data and to identify hotspots, for example, areas of concern where there might be risks, where not. And then, of course, also it's important to know the composition of your sample. For example, the size of the microplastics has an impact, has an influence on the environmental impact, also different polymer types, shapes, and so on.
Rising energy and fertilizer prices are likely to continue contributing to global food inflation, the United Nations warned in its latest report, threatening progress against global hunger. According to the Food Security Report, global hunger has eased modestly, but more than 500 million people could still face chronic hunger by 2030. International Fund for Agricultural Development President Alvaro Lario warned that geopolitical tensions and potential shipping disruptions, including surrounding the Strait of Hormuz during the Iran war, could leave an additional 9 to 18 million people facing hunger. Ongoing conflicts, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine, remain the biggest drivers of higher energy and input prices, hitting small-scale farmers relying on diesel fuel. This comes as the average global cost of a healthy diet jumped to 4.28 purchasing power parity dollars per day, up from 3.44 in 2021. Roughly a third of the global population cannot afford a healthy diet, with the share rising to 77% in low-income countries. With Africa emerging as the epicenter, the continent has overtaken Asia as the region with the largest number of hungry people, where nearly 60% of the world's undernourished could live by 2030. Food and Agricultural Organization Director General Kyu Dong-yu stressed that ending hunger requires political commitment and sustained investment to strengthen agri-food systems against ongoing crisis.
The European Union is preparing to accept new tariffs the United States is expected to impose in the coming days over forced labor, according to the European Commission. Despite considering the new duties unjustified, the Commission said its priority was to ensure tariffs on EU goods remain below the 15% cap agreed under the EU-US trade deal in July 2025. Meanwhile, the White House justified its actions by arguing that insufficient efforts to curb trade in goods produced using forced labor were harming US commercial interests. The current US tariff regime expires on Friday, and one US trade official said on Tuesday that the implementation of the forced labor duties was imminent. As part of its efforts to replace the current regime, the US Trade Department launched an investigation into forced labor in global supply chains, which is due to be concluded in the coming days. In early June, the Commission defended its regulations, saying it had strict rules against products made with forced labor. The Trump administration imposed 10% duties on its global trading partners last February after a US Supreme Court ruling declared its 2025 tariffs illegal.